All right. So this is going to be a little bit different. I've talked about some of the ideas around sponsorship and setup and things like that. One of the things that I'm going to talk about today is WordPress. Now, WordPress is kind of the de facto, well established, accepted way to host a podcast or a podcast website anyway. And there are a few reasons for that. One of the main reasons is that it's relatively easy to set up. You can find a theme for it that looks nice, and you can get things rolling pretty easily. And you can get plugins to do pretty much anything you want in it. Now, I have used WordPress when I started, and then I switched and I built my own system because I'm a software developer. And I thought, okay, well, I can build a better system than this because WordPress turned out to be kind of a pain. And so I maintained that system for a few years. And then a friend of mine at a conference, we sat down and we were talking through some of the stuff that he was doing with WordPress. And it turned out that, hey, it was WordPress made a few things easy, right? And so I switched back off of the custom stuff and ran things on WordPress for a while. And then I talked to another friend, and I eventually wound up switching it to a static site generator, which is essentially a program that takes text files and converts them into web pages. And now I'm switching back. And there are a couple of reasons for this, and there are reasons why I've moved back and forth. And I just kind of want to talk through some of the trade-offs, right? First of all, if you're doing one podcast, WordPress is absolutely 100% the way to go. I mean, it's easy, it's simple. You can set it up, you can make it do whatever you want, and it's really relatively simple. Now, my case is a little bit different because we're running 18 shows, right? And so it gets more complicated when you have more podcasts. And I didn't really have a good way of setting things up so that the different podcasts, would run the way that I wanted them to. And, I thought about splitting them all off onto their own websites, but I kind of like having the co-branded feel to them and things like that. And so, anyway, it kind of went back and forth. So I was playing with, because I'm setting up Podcast Playbook, and I found a theme that I really liked for WordPress for Podcast Playbook that did the videos, and it turns out that it'll do audio as well, right? It'll just put a header image in instead of, anyway, you get the idea. It'll put a header image instead of the video, and then you can play the audio when you go to the page. And that's more or less what my site does anyway right now. So so that kind of got me going. I'm like, oh, okay, this isn't so bad. And then it turned out that this theme also imported a plugin that allows you to set up series. And so I can actually set up a series of shows for each podcast, right? And that what I had done before when I switched back to WordPress the first time is I set up custom post types in WordPress. And so I had a custom post type for every one. The reason I switched off is because I had this maintenance nightmare for a plugin that I had written for WordPress to run the podcasts. And so this series plugin allows me to do a lot of that work without a lot of the hassle. And I can maintain a lot of the, a lot of the stuff that I'm working on right now. So that's one reason. The other reason is because now that WordPress has an API that you can actually use, I can set up automations for WordPress, and I can make a lot of the stuff that I'm doing automatic, so I don't have to pay somebody to do it. And that means that I can take the people that I have working on one thing and I can focus them on other things that are going to be more profitable. So there's that too. And then the last thing is that I'm looking at creating membership sites for some of the different series that we have, right? So Ruby Rogues, for example, we can have a Ruby video series. We can have a Rails video series. We could have a, kind of a general web development series, right? And make those all paid, right? And then I could turn around and could do the same thing for JavaScript and for Angular and for React and for Vue. And you kind of get the idea. And then I can work things out so that, it also gives me a really nice way of setting up affiliate programs for that and things like that, which is what I was looking to do with Podcast Playbook, but I can also do it in the programming space for these other things. And so that turned out to be a really, really nice feature for that. And it lets it run everything that way. Now, I'm not completely happy with the way that WordPress does RSS feeds. And I don't necessarily want, because the majority of the traffic or the hits that are going to come toward any of my web properties are going to be your phone periodically pinging the RSS feed to see if anything's changed, every hour or so. And our longest running show has 500 and something episodes on it. And so the issue becomes then, that's a really, really long RSS feed that it has to build from scratch every time. And so that's kind of a pain. So anyway, just putting that in there. So anyway, I've kind of worked through all of that, and I have another system that I programmed that builds my RSS feeds for me, and I'm just going to keep using that. But in the meantime, moving everything else over to WordPress now at this point allows me to make all these different changes, and the series plugin allows me to run things without necessarily having to set up custom post types for everything. And I can set up the permalink so that it just uses a slug for the podcast, and then stuff stays mostly the same. So that's more or less how that breaks down, and that's why I'm switching back. But the other thing is that I've been paying $45 a month for a system that allows me to manage the static site, because the people who work for me aren't programmers, and they would have to learn Markdown in order to write the show notes. And so that's a trade-off as well. And so anyway, I guess lesson learned is, WordPress at this point. I know you can host on like Squarespace and other places, but for me, that's where I'd go. So that's just a rundown here real quick on why I'm switching over to WordPress. So, I'll probably spend part of the day today working on that, getting it all moved over, getting the theme set up. But the other thing is if you're doing just one podcast and it's new, setup take you an hour. For me, moving everything over is going to take me a few hours, but that's pretty much where we're at. So anyway, that's why I'm switching over to WordPress. Till next time, Max out.